This is for you. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm Allie Heiss. I'm coming to you live from Pensacola, Florida. Join with me, as always, beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. We've got Dustin. Dustin, how you living? How you doing?
My Browns are 3-10.
Yep, they are.
So that part of my life is not living so well. But
no,
my Boise State Broncos are the number 3 team in the country. So I have something. I've told people many times that you can't have everything in life. Life would be too easy, right? Have your Browns great, your Boise State football great. I mean, I got Guardians, I got Cavs. I can't have everything, Allie. We can't have everything in life. That's not how life works. But we're going to get into it. There was a lot to unpack out of this football game today. Your Cleveland Browns are 3-10. They are who their record is. They're now probably fighting for that top 5 spot in the NFL draft. I didn't see did the Raiders end up losing today. I know there's
yeah, they did.
There'll be some shuffling. Some teams obviously only have 2 wins in the league, but your Cleveland Browns aren't very good. But I'm going to get into why I think there's a lot of positive pieces in this Browns team and why it's not all, in my opinion, on the coaching and some other things. But go ahead, Allie.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, and this is my first show back. I've been out a little bit between the wedding and then I was out in Arizona, so I've been not as plugged in. And like I said 2 weeks ago, I'm like, it's kind of refreshing. It's been nice, especially during a season like this where it's, a lot of ups and downs, highs and lows. But I'll tell you this, I watched that Monday Night Football game in Denver. We were in the Denver airport, watched it in Denver. And
okay, that's weird. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was very strange. I had a layover. I was just sitting at the bar, and I'm like, this is so weird. This is so strange. But one thing about this Browns team, Dustin, is they're not boring. They give us things to talk about. Even when they lose right now, there's still conversation. Earlier on in this season, full transparency, when Deshaun Watson was your quarterback and we were losing in egregious manners and really, really bad quarterback play, we would just get on these shows just utterly defeated, right? Like there's nothing good to talk about. There's nothing good you can take away from these games. But right now, even with Jameis, while they're losing and it's not necessarily a good football product, there are things to be optimistic about. I can say, hey, even though he will turn the ball over every 10 throws, you always expect a very exciting play after that. You always expect, just an insane Jameis Winston play. So there is excitement with this team. And I will say this, just from a lens of optimism, the team still seems bought in, right? I think that the players still look excited to be out there. I don't think this coaching staff has entirely lost this team. No. And I know we've talked about that before. This doesn't look like a team that's just dreading going out and doing their job every single week. Right. There's obviously things we would like to see differently, but overall, it's like, okay, like maybe it's not going to be so bad next year. Before I turn it over to you, Dustin, I just want to give a shout out to our friends over at Stadium Mustard, Lorello Vineyards, Hartville Marketplace and Flea Market, True Fan Travel, City Barbecue, and Western Reserve Distillers. Dustin, I'll turn it over to you. Give me your perspective on that.
Yeah. So when I see a coach on the sidelines, shaking his head in disbelief because there's things he can't control on the field. I don't know what the hell's happened to Dustin Hopkins in the last month, but he can't hit the broadside of a barn. I'm sorry. He's not making easy or long kicks. And I know all kickers go through this. I mean, we could say this about Justin Tucker, one of the greatest of all times. He's having a horrible year in Baltimore. This does happen to kickers. But then just pre-snap penalties, just things that aren't the coach's fault right at the end of the day. That's just the players just not getting things right on the field. And to see someone like Jerry Jeudy continue to have a good game this game, that coming over from what he did in Denver and going from like number 11 to number 5 in passing, top 5, wide receivers in the NFL. I mean, there's pieces on this football team, but good pieces. It's just there are key pieces that are just missing. And here's the thing. I love Winston, But I can't have a quarterback next year go out and run an offense that's going to put up, 400 yards offense and throw 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in the same game. You're not going to win those football games. Now, is he a good backup? Yes, and he will be a good backup. Is there an argument to keep him on the team? Absolutely. But the more this season progresses, I really do think the Cleveland Browns are going to draft a quarterback. I think,
They are.
I mean, that becomes more and more apparent, which also upsets me because here's the other thing I see. I also see them not picking a quarterback in this draft. And what I mean by that is, the Sam Darnolds and some of those guys that may be available as a bridge quarterback next year, because we know none of us want to see number 4 back out there under center. And he's going to be hurt, and he wouldn't even be ready to go week 1 anyway. I'd rather us go after a running back. Oh, I don't know. That's going to change your franchise for the next 6 to 8 years, because I love Nick Chubb, but what I'm seeing out there is not the same Nick Chubb of the last 5 years. It's just not. I mean, he's.
Well, we knew that was going to be likely.
But I think he's lost a step, and what I mean by that is there's no reason the Browns can't sign him to another 1-year deal. But this team was the most dangerous when you had the 1-2 punch of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. They were a very dangerous football team because they would just wear people down. And I think the Browns have to really think about that, because this isn't a deep quarterback draft. Sanders is not coming here as a quarterback. Ward might be the answer, but I don't know. Like, I'm not going to see him in the playoffs, so I don't know what he's going to do against some really good competition in the playoffs. I don't know if you go out and throw it all away on a quarterback, because that quarterback is then going to be forced to play next year in Cleveland, because that is the expectations of a first-round quarterback in the National Football League. So,
well, I think the Browns need a lot of help. Yes, they need a quarterback. Is there value later in the draft to get a guy? Maybe. Maybe there is. Maybe you're right, Dustin. Maybe they're sitting at number 5 overall, and they're like, hey, we can get Ashton Genty. Maybe that makes sense. Or they say, hey, if they're top 10 pick, we're going to, develop or, kind of add to a veteran offensive line. We're going to go get a young tackle who is going to be the future. Now, I know they tried to do that a couple of years ago with Jed Wills. That hasn't panned out. But, this Browns team isn't going to be able to do anything in the future if they can't solidify their offensive line. I mean, you mentioned Nick Chubb having lost a step. And while that is true, he's also behind an offensive line that is just pieced together right now, that is really on the struggle bus, for lack of better words. But I do think that the Browns will be drafting a quarterback. Where, that remains to be seen. We'll have other shows where we go through all of them, because trust me, we will. There's a lot to talk about. Joe, I agree with you. You don't draft a running back top 5, but also there's not very many Ashton Gentys out there. So maybe you do. I mean, Lions did it with Jahmyr Gibbs a couple of years ago, and I disagreed with it with my entire being. And look, I still kind of do. Like, I still think that there's better value, but it worked for them. They have a really good 1-2 punch with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
And look what their record is, because they put away teams. I mean, the Lions just put away.
But yeah, so we're going to talk about that a lot. But just funny how things change so quickly. A couple of weeks ago, Dustin, we're on this show, and you said, "Hey, I think Jameis Winston is the bridge quarterback. He's back here next year. He is the bridge quarterback to Cam Ward or whoever it is." And how quickly that can change, because I think while it's fun and exciting and we're all kind of Jameis fans, it's fun to go watch him make some insane plays. I think if the expectation is to roll him out there in a 17-game season, most people will be pulling their hair out. That is just not going to be fun. It's fun for a little bit, right? It's fun for a few games, or it's fun when there's no expectations with the remainder of the season. But when you go into a new season with a fresh start, with maybe a rebuilt offensive line, healthy running back room, good receivers, but bad quarterback play, guys, we know what that looks like. We've lived it this year. It's not fun. And I think that, while there's a lot of optimism surrounding Jameis, because he's a really funny guy, fan favorite, he can make some insane plays, those turnovers are just, just makes you want to just claw your eyes out sometimes.
Here's the thing, that just baffles me, because he can be so on target with some of his throws,
Yeah.
but that screen pass over the head to get to Chubb. I mean, I was sitting there like, you can't be doing that. Like, I mean, you're just giving the team, and then when it's late in the fourth quarter, and then you just throw another just kind of dumb interception. Like,
Yeah.
my point being, it's like, it's just you can't do that, right? Like, you just can't give your. I mean, I think I've used this stat many times, and I think it still holds true. But it's like a 90-some percentage of teams in the NFL. Whoever wins the turnover battle wins the football game. Like, you're literally saying, okay, if I have more turnovers, you're going to lose. Like, it's just like it's because you're just giving your opposition more opportunities to score.
Yeah.
Like, it's simple math at the end of the day.
It's fun for now. It's fun for now when there's no expectations on the season. But when you have a whole off season, expectations are high again because we know how Browns fans are. We get optimistic in the off season. This is the year we're going to do it, and then to have the same thing play out, that's not going to be. It's not going to be good. There's gonna be some changes this off season, and there should be. All right, let's get into the game. Before we do that, also want to tell you about our friends over at Five Iron Golf, Lady Caroline, Greater Cleveland Aquarium, and also Cleveland Landscaping. Guys, also Cleveland Landscaping, they also do snow removal. So we know what time of year it is. Be sure to give them a call. Let's talk about the Steelers team. I think it's so just entirely on brand that Russell Wilson goes to Pittsburgh to revitalize his career, and he's doing it, but it's also a good fit for Pittsburgh. That is the most just Pittsburgh thing ever of all time, for it to work for them. But I want to talk about this game, this matchup. I think that Steelers kind of went into this a little bit nervous, knowing that they had just lost to the Browns not that long ago. They came out absolutely swinging. The first couple of plays, I mean, the Steelers defense was absolutely suffocating this Browns offense. And I want to give credit to this Browns team. I thought after the first series, there's no way that this Browns team is going to do anything today. Checked out. I was like, oh, they didn't show up today. They are not ready for this. And then the next offensive series punched them right in the mouth like they just did. I am impressed with this offense. While sometimes it makes me want to absolutely just pull my hair out, I am impressed with their will, their drive, and their determination to go out there and have a very short memory. Say, hey, all of that to the side, we're going to go out on this series and win. And I was impressed by that. I don't think that they've necessarily found their identity, but they are making strides the later portion of this season to kind of find that.
Yeah, and you know what? I can't pull my hair out. That ended a few years ago. But I got to tell you, I'm not worried about the defense. Let me just put it that way. And I don't know if there's a couple things I want to bring just that have kind of stood out to me over the last couple of weeks. I think it was Troy Aikman during the game. I think it was against Denver. He said the what if Browns, if they would have, went on and talked to Jameson earlier and get him in the game earlier this season, would this be a lost season, or would this be more of a 500 Browns team fighting for a playoff spot? And he goes, and in a part of that, for the Browns defensive woes, that, in some part due to the offense and the anemic offense that the Browns have. He goes, when your offense is that bad, that's going to affect your defense, even if it's a good defense, right? So I thought that was pretty interesting how he said that. Alec, I don't know if I know you're a big fan of, listening to Nathan and Bo when they do their. Did you pick up about a week ago or less what he said about the quarterback position? Now, remember, Nathan's hired by the Browns. He works for the Browns. Did you hear the comment that he made about the quarterback position?
I did, but why don't you inform our listeners what was said?
Yeah, he pretty much said, and I don't want to quote him, but he basically said, we obviously know where we're at with the quarterback position is not the direction we want to go in. Like, I think it's kind of how he said it with, and I'm not trying to mince his words, but I mean, that was kind of a telling statement from a guy that's within the organization. And you don't, again, we didn't get that from any of the coaches. We didn't get that from Andrew Berry, except for, I don't know, next year. What do you make of that? Because that's a guy that's got the ear of the entire organization. I'm just curious.
Even though we didn't hear it from one of the coaches, I think Nathan Zagura is just as close to the organization almost as a coach would be. Not only doing Cleveland Browns daily and being within the organization on a daily basis, but also, being on the call. He is plugged into this roster. I am willing to bet that nobody knows this 53-man roster better than Nathan Zagura. Like, he is elite.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to Browns knowledge and the trajectory of this team, the path forward for this team. I think he is as plugged in as anybody. And for that comment from him, I think it's very telling. It tells you what you need to know and where this organization sits with the future of the quarterback position.
Yeah, and it's just interesting that he would just pretty much put it out there, right? Like, it wasn't like he accidentally said it. I mean, he obviously had to think before he made that comment, and knew that would be watched by Browns and, the organization as well. Yeah, I think this is an organization that has to find out another way to go, path forward next year at quarterback. And here's the thing. The Browns, technically, based on who they have on their current roster, if it's a bridge quarterback or a rookie quarterback at that matter, they can afford that luxury next year to put that person at quarterback. And that's why I'm like, I don't really want them to draft a quarterback, because you could have a bridge guy in there. And if you have an Ashton Genty and a Nick Chubb in the backfield, and you have Jerry Jeudy and Njoku and those guys, you don't have to have a superstar at quarterback. You just have to get the ball into those people's, you just have to run the offense, in my opinion, at that point. You don't have to be flashy. You just have to not make mistakes in the game. You need a game manager at that point. And that's going to change the trajectory of this team. And then, oh, by the way, you ate that $70-some million or whatever that cap hit was. You can move on from someone like Deshaun Watson in the year 2026, because you're at a, $80 million cap, and you can do something very similar to what the Denver Broncos did. Now, is it going to hurt for a second? Sure. But if you got a quarterback on a rookie deal, that's a 4-year deal, man. That's not very expensive,
That's true. However, you do have a quarterback on a rookie deal in that hypothetical scenario, but who's not on a rookie deal is Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Jeremiah Usu-Koramoah, the interior of this offensive line, very expensive guys, and that are either in their prime or just on the outside of their prime. This is a roster going into this season, and we've said this many, many times on this podcast. This is a roster going into the season that had Super Bowl expectations. And I think asking fans and asking these players, the Denzel Wards, the Myles Garrett, guys like that, to say, hey, just wait another year. I dare I say wasting talent, because we're so appreciative of those players and what they do week in and week out, but that's kind of what it is. And the most expensive offense in the league, to have the most expensive offense in the league, but not being able to do anything. I do think I don't think you need to go ultra flashy at quarterback, but I don't think you say, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get the job done. I just don't see that. I think you do need to do something, because I'm still of the belief that, hey, you have asked so much of the fans, just not that far removed. We're 1-15, 0-16. You bring in a polarizing guy like Deshaun Watson, splits the fan base, and then it just falls flat on their face. I mean, this is now going on 10 years of expectations, and to draft a quarterback in Baker Mayfield and then get rid of him, and now to see the success that he's having, it is asking so much, not only of the fans, but of the players currently on the roster. And I just think that you want to save that. You want to save your fans. You want to save a little bit of face here. You're going to have to make a move. And I also say that, Dustin, because when we look at the free agent market for quarterbacks, there's not a lot out there right now. There's really not a lot out there. Sam Darnold, yeah. I actually think Sam Darnold with Kevin Stefanski would be a lot of fun. That you can talk me into. But we also need to say, hey, Sam Darnold's playing very well this year. He's going to demand a higher contract. There are some things here that aren't as easy as discussing it on a podcast. There's going to have to be some maneuverability. And that is one thing that Andrew Berry's good at. But right now, I think that the concerns with the development of players with Andrew Berry and maybe the premature signings of players is questionable from Andrew Berry. So let's kind of segue into that. They extended Dustin Hopkins early. They paid him early. hasn't paid off. What has happened to Dustin Hopkins?
I don't know. I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's an issue with kickers in the league this year
Yeah.
overall. I mean, there's a kickers are having a down year period, and I don't know what it is. Like, it's a very interesting year. Here's the thing. I'm not going to make a lot of it right now. I'm going to pump the brakes on Dustin until probably the end of the season. I want to see his body of work. I mean, this could be a month of just flukeness, where he's just not having a good month. And we move into December, the last 4 weeks of the season here now. I don't know. Like, again, we have to see, right? Is that something you move on from, or do you keep him, trade him, whatever? I don't know. But here's the thing I was going to kind of go back to the quarterback position. The one thing that does give me hope about the National Football League, every year there's about 40% of the teams that are in the playoffs that are not in the playoffs the following year. And there's a lot of parity in this league. And where I guess I'm going with this is you look at teams like the Commanders, okay? They were not very good football team last year. They get a decent quarterback. Some even would say, very, very good quarterback in there this year.
Above decent, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I'm
with you. I'm with you.
I'm just saying he could have a sophomore slump. We just don't know, right? We just don't know what. It's a very small window of work. But if the Browns get something like that and they hit on him and he's successful and he can get the ball into Jerry Jeudy and these playmakers' hands and he does well, then you've kind of flipped the script, right? You've gotten a guy on a rookie deal. He's affordable. You still have talent at the wide receiver, tight end position. Tillman will be back, right? We know these, you'll have some good offensive pieces, and you can only add to that in the draft next year. Because now you do have a full slate of all your draft picks, plus you've picked up one from the Smith trade and the Cooper trade. So now you have a bevy of draft picks, right? That you can actually put some, as you put it, some of these guys are on their edge of prime going out. Now you need to start filling in with some youth. The best teams in the NFL have a combination of both, right? Some veteran leadership and some young talent mixed in. I think that's the answer for the Browns next year. They have to look at the draft, look at some of these guys that they can position in, along with some of these young guys. We definitely have some young guys on defense, but, you probably have to look at like the offensive line. Some of these guys, Joe Patonio is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he's got a couple years left, right? Maybe. Wyatt Teller, some of these other guys, Ethan Posick, Jack Conklin, all these guys you're going to have to look at and start to, and I don't know. We play in the AFC North, and I guess and I'm not trying to be biased here, but if I'm the Cleveland Browns and I'm looking at the NFL draft next year, and I look what the Pittsburgh Steelers did to us today, what the Baltimore Ravens do with Derrick Henry, why wouldn't you go get an Ashton Jeanty and match that up with Nick Chubb and then fill in around and get a tackle in the top of the second round, or somewhere there, because probably still going to be a pretty damn good tackle at the top of the second, right? From what I can tell, it's a pretty decent draft for, tackles and guys this next year. You got to build for the future while trying to protect your future. You know what I mean?
It's crazy, Dustin. And we sat on this podcast, the beginning of this season, actually in the preseason, we said, hey, this is a team that is all in. Andrew Berry has been, in his press availability before the season, he was very clear that we are all in. This is our 1 to maybe 2 year window to go win a Super Bowl. And then 4 weeks into it, we say, just kidding. And every single solitary year at this point on the podcast, we're like, but this time next year will be better. I don't believe it. I want to give credit to, pains me to say, I want to give credit to a team like Pittsburgh, who had a quarterback problem after Ben Roethlisberger left. We all know that. But they found a way to win with Duck Hodges. They found a way to win with Mason Rudolph. They found a way to bring in Justin Fields and win with him in the beginning of the season. And now Russell Wilson, who was cooked. Don't let Russ cook last year. He was cooked. He was the one that was cooked last year. To come in and win in Pittsburgh, they find ways to win. And I think that is a testament to their culture, that winning culture. And I think that this team, this organization, this front office, they have some looking in the mirror to do to figure out how do we get there? And I
Well,
think that there were some moments, and there are some moments. I want to be clear on that. Like I said earlier, there's some things to be optimistic about with this team and these players, but something has to shift. Something has to change. Look at Detroit, for the love of God. I mean, they were terrible. And then they bring in Dan Campbell. He said, "Hey, we're going to bite your freaking kneecaps off." And guess what? They do that. They will bite your kneecaps off.
well,
So it is instilling not only a winning culture, but a culture of determination and like Detroit grit and toughness. You look at this Browns team, and I think that there's moments where like you're like, yeah, that's a really tough football team. Last year on defense, that's a really tough team. This year, it's like, man, some of this, like, what? Who is this? Who are we? What are we doing?
and here's why I don't think the coaching's a problem. And let me just go down a little bit of a path here. Your point being, they brought in Russell Wilson. That coach, Mr. Mike Tomlin, who's a good coach, is able to transcend and make Russell Wilson and get the best out of Russell Wilson. Now, let's take that same model and look at our quarterbacks that Kevin Stefanski's had under his tutelage. Okay. He took a Baker Mayfield, got the best out of him, and took him to the second round of the playoffs. He took a Joe Flacco that hadn't played football in 9 months and was able to run the Stefanski offense. He's with Dorsey and Stefanski. Winston has been able to run the Stefanski offense. Watson can't run the Stefanski offense at the end of the day. That's the problem. He just can't run this offense, and he doesn't do well in this offense. That's where I get back to, if you can just find a quarterback that plays well in this Stefanski type of offense, you're good. You're going to be okay, because clearly Stefanski has no problem finding a quarterback and say, look, got this. This is what we're going to do. You understand this offense, right? And it's worked, and it's worked multiple times, so much so that he was in 5 quarterbacks at one point last year, to where these guys understood the actual offense. I'm sorry, but just Deshaun Watson doesn't understand this offense, and that's the problem.
Point taken. However, when was this is kind of going in a little bit of a different direction here. When was the last time the Cleveland Browns won a game in Pittsburgh in the regular season?
1988. 1988.
Actually, no, it was more recent than that. Your quarterback was Tim Couch.
Right.
It was the 2003 Cleveland Browns.
Tim Couch, right. But it was 1988 that they've swept the actual.
Right, yeah. But just winning a game in the regular season in Pittsburgh. And again, I go back to the culture. And since the return, there has been a lack of that. And that's why I say I think it starts at the top. Ownership. You need to take a look in the mirror and say, what do we do to instill a winning culture? Coaching staff. And I'm not just saying Kevin Stefanski. I'm saying all of the coaches, all of the scouts, everybody involved with the process, taking a look in the mirror, and players too. It starts at the top. I just, I'm envious of other teams that can just say, hey, we're going to go get Duck Hodges and go win some football games, when we have, obviously last year we had Joe Flacco, and it was a fun season, but, consistently speaking, year in and year out, it's like we're sitting here every single year saying, oh, next year they do this, they're going to have a good, it'll be good. And it's just, it's my lifetime.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think there is a world where, and I think I know the answer, part of it's no, where there is a team out there that says, you know what? It's the football team. It's the Browns. They don't know what to do with quarterbacks. We can fix Deshaun Watson. Trade him to wherever. I mean, do you think that there is a world where he is tradable?
Yeah, I do. I think the player Deshaun Watson is tradable to the right situation. The contract of Deshaun Watson is not.
Right, no, I agree.
So if we are looking at all things, like, no, that's a tough one. But if we're just talking about the player and an organization taking a flyer on a guy like Deshaun Watson, yeah, definitely. I think that even if he comes back from this injury and he is still playing football for the Cleveland Browns, let alone in the National Football League, there are going to be teams that say, hey, we know what he can do. We know what he's capable of. We'll, throw maybe a late round situation at it and see what they can make of it, or even as a backup. But truthfully, I don't know that Deshaun Watson is long for the NFL, especially after this injury. I really don't. I think that what has happened, what has just transpired since his time in Houston to now here in Cleveland, mentally speaking, like that is a lot. That is a lot to go through as a person and a player.
For
So
anybody, right?
yeah, I don't really expect to see what's happened to Russell Wilson happen to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I mean, I just and I just don't know what you do with that money, right? I mean, that's the end of the day. I just have this horrible feeling it's going to go down as like, if not the worst trade in NFL or
Hey,
NFL history.
Dustin, can I tell you something?
What's that?
You don't have to have a horrible feeling about that because it's already happened. It already is. I think if you ask anybody on the street, anybody, or anybody with, that has watched football and say, hey, name the worst trade in not only in the NFL, but the worst trade in the history of sports, this one's in the conversation.
Yeah,
It's in the conversation.
which is crazy. But it's funny. There was 4 teams that were in the sweepstakes to get him. We all know that there was final, and we were the only one that was willing to offer the fully guaranteed right at the end of the day. So,
So that brings this question from Joe: could he retire and we keep the money or no? No, it's fully guaranteed. We are on the hook. The Cleveland Browns are on the hook for that contract. Now, I think that there's a world where they can potentially reconfigure a contract and say, hey, we can turn some of this into an upfront bonus or whatever, just to kind of relieve some of the back end payment. But regardless, the Browns are obligated to that money, and it would be a huge cap hit. But we saw the New York Giants do it with Danny Dimes, right? Like, I give them credit. Them identifying, hey, we gave Danny Dimes this contract. It sucked. We shouldn't have done it. And just saying, we'll take the hit. So I think there's a world where that happens. I think so, but I don't know.
Here's a question: is this that even exists in the NFL? And I know I'm going down a rabbit hole here. Is there a world in the NFL, because I know there is a salary cap, but is there a world, like when you say bonuses versus actual salary, is there a world where the Browns could sign him bonuses into perpetuity for the next 7 years at 20 million a year, just as like a bonus that he gets? I call it the Barry Bonds. You remember the Barry Bonds deal where he still gets $1 million a year for 20 whatever year, 30 years or whatever it is. It's called Barry Bonds Day, where he gets $1 million paid to him. I know. Is that even a thing that exists in the NFL? Like a bonus that can be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in the Browns' best interest, though, if they are going to move off and be done with it. Just be done with it. Get it off the books now, rather than 20 years down the line you still owe Deshaun Watson. Still being held to this player, this contract, this in any manner.
Saying like the bonus part could be pushed out where the actual salary cap. If you moved it all into bonuses, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I see. So, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
So you're not taking the cap hit every year at a big extra,
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I don't make the big bucks, because I don't know. But nonetheless, it's an unfortunate situation to be in. And I know that, this is kind of the core of every show we talk about, or every podcast that we do. There's something looming overhead. But, even when Deshaun Watson did go out and Jameis came in, there was a lift with the fan base, right? And saying, hey, like, we don't really have expectations that this team's going to go out and do anything, but we're going to have fun doing it. I think once the Browns officially do say, hey, we're done with this, whatever the next step is, I think that the fans will buy in, just because whatever it is can't be worse than what it was.
Well, you know why? And I've been a fan my entire life, Allie, obviously, for most of my adulthood and childhood, I've been a fan. For the last 25 years, this fan base is so shell-shocked when it comes to the quarterback position. There's a reason there's a jersey in this city with 30 frickin' names on it that start from couch down, okay? So what I mean by that is when they see any glimmer of greatness at quarterback, they clamor to it. Like Joe Flacco fever last year. Like, oh my God, 400-yard passing games, 390. Like, look at all these touchdowns. Oh my gosh, he's the offensive player of the week. Like, they clamor towards that. Oh my gosh, Baker Mayfield's the savior. He's the first guy to come in here and open the Bud Light coolers and we're off to the races and now we have a winning franchise. They clamor to those things because this franchise is, I'm sorry, gotten the quarterback position just horribly wrong for over a quarter century. So, yeah, so fans are going to be clamoring at anything that could be the next great savior for this football team, right? They love James, they love Winston because he's funny, he's exciting. I mean, that Monday Night Football game, my God, we didn't win it, but man, it was the most entertaining game all year. I mean, like it was like the guy, I mean, Alec, he put up 23 yards shy of Tom Brady for the most passing in an NFL game in history. I mean, like it was entertaining, but it also was like you had 6 touchdowns in this game, 4 for us and 2 for the opponent. That's how you lose a football game. Like it's crazy, but it's just maddening to me that this franchise, and I just feel bad for this franchise in period, that they haven't been able to go out and the truth be known, it's hard to find a good quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's why people swing and miss a lot. And I would say there's probably 8 to 12 good quarterbacks in this league, and then the rest are above average or good, right? And that's why those teams rise to the top. And those other teams are always clamoring to find the next great quarterback to lead their franchise to the promised land. You know, Patrick Mahomes don't grow on trees, right? Those kind of quarterbacks just aren't out there. And it's just for that team's reach, they get desperate. They make moves like Deshaun Watson to try to make to close that gap against the the guy the Patrick Mahomes and those guys. That's why they do that, because they know if they don't close that gap, they aren't going to be able to compete against those teams at the end of the day, right? So when you look at like franchises like the Bills and those teams, same reason that the Jets make a flash move on Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, man, that's all we need. That's all we need is that quarterback, right? That's all we need is that guy, because we got the wide receivers, the ones from Ohio State, the great wide receivers and stuff. We got everything else around him. Aaron Rodgers is the answer. And then he's not. So these teams all the time go and make flyers on things that they think are going to, like, it's like, I call it the magic pill when it comes to quarterback. If we just insert that magic pill, it's going to solve all of our problems. And it's not working. It's not working.
It's true. It's true. Just real quick to go around the league here. Obviously, you know the outcome today. Steelers beat the Browns 27-14. Saints come away on top 14-11 over the New York Football Giants. The Dolphins get it done at home 32-26 over the Jets. Jags beat the Titans. Falcons lose to the Vikings. Vikings won 42-21. Panthers, man, they keep it close. The Eagles beat them 22-16. They keep it close in these games. They rise to the occasion. Bucks beat the Raiders 28-13, and currently Seattle is up on the Cardinals 24-10. The Niners are taking it to the Bears at halftime 24-0, and then at half the Rams are up 24-14 over the Buffalo Bills.
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy. Joe has a question, Dustin. He wants to know if that's a Browns clock behind you because he really likes it. Is it what is that? What do you got going on there?
So here, this is good. This is was a gift from my friend Scott for my birthday, or Christmas gift. It was a Christmas gift, I believe. So here's the crazy thing about that. It's not a clock. It is actually handmade wood and hand carved Browns helmet. Now here's the thing: the battery is out. So maybe for a future show, that actual Browns helmet, it actually glows up behind it. So it's actually all hand carved wood,
cool.
And then painted. So it's kind of a one piece, I like to say. But it actually, the battery needs to be put behind it, so it actually will light up. So
there you go. That's pretty cool. There you go, Joe. All right, Dustin. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up on a beautiful Sunday evening?
Yeah. While we were here, I got a call from the Boise State Athletic ticket office. Wonder what they want. So. Boise State football. That's what I'm excited about. That's what I'm focusing on. My Boise State Broncos are heading to the college football playoffs, and they kind of broke the ceiling on college football with what they did this year. I don't know if you saw, they put the actual goalpost in the river too, in 20 degrees and threw it into the Boise River, which is insane to me. Allie, your Ohio State Buckeyes, they're in the playoffs. They're going to host a game against the Tennessee Volunteers. So Do you think they got? Let me, before we close out our alley, did they get it right? College Football Playoff Committee, did they get it right this
Oh
year?
gosh, I could talk about this for a while. I think look, I think that there's things that they got right, and I think that there's things that they got wrong. I think Penn State benefits the most by losing to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. They will go up against SMU, and then the winner of that game would then go on to Boise State. But in the sense that you've got Oregon, who will have to then face either Ohio State or Tennessee, some high-powered offense. I think there's some discussion to be had, right, on if you need to reseed after the
That's
championship
been
game.
the biggest. That's been the biggest.
That's the thing.
Right.
I think I'm very curious to see how this plays out, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is some things different next year. Look, I love the 12 team.
Tweaking.
Yes, I love the 12-team playoff, but there are going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some bumps. This is the first year of it. You're always going to have teams, especially in this instance, where if let's just say you don't say, hey, conference champs, you get a first round bye, that will say, well, we don't need to win this game, like an Ole Miss situation. We don't need to go.
Yeah.
Who cares if we don't make the conference title game or if we lose that game because it benefits us? So to kind of keep the integrity of the game, I think there's some discussions to be had. But I think there's some things they got right. I think there's some things that they'll probably change next year, but we could have a whole podcast about it.
Yeah, as I say, the craziest thing for Boise State is they asked Ashton Genty after the game, hey, how do you feel that you're not going to have to play for 21 days? And he goes, I absolutely love the sound of that because, now you're going to get a running back that's going to have 20 days fresh legs, a guy like that. It's going to be crazy because he's going to come in pretty re-energized, and have some fresh legs where he has been – he's been banged up this season. He's had to take a lot of the load when you rush for almost 2,500 yards, which is insane to think. But no, it'll be exciting. If we win that game, the next one it looks like that we would be Georgia. So that'd be, if we can get past that second round, that'd be a crazy matchup for a Final Four for Georgia.
Yeah.
But,
there's some matchups I'm excited about.
What's that?
I said there's some matchups I'm excited about. I think Notre Dame, Indiana is going to be interesting. SMU, Penn State, actually all of the first round games I think are going to be really exciting. Ohio State.
Ohio State will be a really, really good game. Tennessee, Ohio State will be a really good game.
Really cool. Really cool. Yeah. And some matchups you just never get to see. So I think it's cool. I'm excited about it. But I could go on and on and on. But for the sake of this show, I'm not going to do that. All right, Dustin. That's all I got. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you. Stay safe, stay healthy. And as always, Browns fans, go Browns.
Go Browns.